Welcome to the Concert Queen Connect. Real excited today to be joined by the one and only Curtis Roush from the Bright Light Social Hour. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you.
He's got a festive pink scrunchie. We just talked about that. I'm very jealous. I think I have one, but not anymore. Somewhere.
You can have this one.
Well, you said you pick them out. You get like these giant packs.
I'm having a hair down day, and I have a number of other pink scrunchies. So,
do you?
Yeah, you can just go in the table.
Oh, that's what we should have, Steve. We should have an altar.
Yeah.
And just have things put right here.
Yeah.
There we go. See, you started the first one. We have our first offering. So you just came from the studio. What were you working on over there?
Jackie, my bandmate in the Bright Light Social Hour, we're just still making records. You know, we took the year off, obviously, of performing music. So
yeah,
where our families are very close, so we kind of kept a pod, you know, and kept just writing. And so we're just working on a new record.
Wow. So then how was it during COVID and all that time? I mean, like you said, you didn't get to perform, but you guys were like on a roll. You'd already done all these major music festivals. So I'm sure that was a big, obviously kind of stopping point for everyone.
In some ways, I think it was good for us. We like our last thing that we did before we got off the road was like another really long tour, like 9 weeks or something. And the kind of tours that like your brain feels weird when you come back. Like I would describe it as like you have a certain number of sparkles in your eyes when you're born or whatever. And you do a 9-week tour and one of them goes out. You know, it's like, and so we got to spend a year getting great sleep and like all that stuff. But like performing music is like a deep part of what makes us happy. So, you know, it was good and bad, obviously. I had just started, my folks and I have a small ranch out in Wimberley, and we just kind of put all that energy into the land. Like we built a little orchard and a barn, and we've just been kind of like occupying ourselves that way.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Have you always like grown up kind of in that, like around a farm and doing things like that? That was just something new?
I just grew up in Round Rock in the suburbs. Like, you know, so it's actually new for me learning trades.
Yeah. What kind of trades did you learn?
Marketable trades.
Are we talking about like LinkedIn skill trades or just like?
I'm just good with a shovel, you know? Yeah.
So just shoveling.
Ranch work.
Got it. Well, that's really cool. So then you're there, you're doing all this other kind of stuff. And then are you also, so you play all the instruments, is that right?
In a record that I made like on my own name, I played all the instruments. Got it. But with Bright Light Social Hour, Jack plays bass and sings and writes the songs too. And Edward Braliff has been with us for since 2013 as our touring keyboard player and then collaborator. And we recently just started playing with the new drummers, Zach Catanzaro, about a year and a half ago. Wow.
And so then what kind of changes that, or what was that change from? Just
sometimes people wear out of each other like a really long period of time. Like Jack and I are maybe the exception to the rule. We've somehow been in a band together for 17 years. I just figured it out the other day. We met in college. And it's funny, we have that like CoStar app, you know, where it's like, you can check your astrological compatibility. And Jack and I have like all smiley faces, you know? So I think that's maybe the key to our like long lasting relationship. Friendship, yeah. But maybe some of the other people didn't have all smiley faces. And, you know, at some point you really learn in a van, you know, if you're stuck in a van for someone for like 5, 6, 7 weeks, you're like, maybe I can't do this forever. Yeah. And sometimes people need breaks from it too. Like not everyone really likes living on the road. Yeah.
So you're in the van 5. Wow. So it's a long time to be with anyone. I think the longest I've ever been in a car with someone was like 23 hours, and that was a lot. Yeah. And but I can't imagine like 5 weeks of just constant touring and doing all that.
Yeah. Sometimes you're underslept. Sometimes you're like hungover many days over. You know, it's like it can bring out the worst in people, but it's also like such great adventure. You know, it's like, you know.
Yeah. And with CoStar, so for people that aren't familiar with CoStar, it's this app where you plug in, right, like your full name, your location of where you were born, and the time of birth,
and your date of birth.
And it pulls up like all your astrological signs, but
gives you your full chart. You know, like I'm a Scorpio and my ascendant is Leo and my moon is Virgo. Jack is a Cancer, but we have the same ascendant and moon. And then our new drummer Zach has the same ascendant and moon. So we're like really like vibe brothers, you know.
That's cool.
Weird coincidence.
Did you check that, or like when they were like filling out applications, you're like, you need to put that?
I should know. I'm typically more of a skeptic, but the astrology stuff is just for fun, really. But
do you have all like the Scorpio traits?
You know, I used to deny them, but I think I do.
Yeah, the Scorpion. I know. It's funny because Tamika Jones was here and she was talking about how like that's what she did kind of during COVID, was getting into all of her like astrology and how she was feeling with that. And she's like, wow, I never knew all this existed. And it just became like a whole thing for her, like crystals and just getting into all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I love that. That's really cool. So then what have you been working on, I guess, now? You said you've been working on a new album. Is there anything different compared to all the other ones that you're kind of looking forward to?
We always like taking a left turn from where we were just coming from, you know, like
so tell me about that.
Maybe to lay out the full thing. So, you know, Jack and I are in and out during like the 2000s. We're in and out of school, studying abroad. We went to grad school at the same time. We got really sick of school then at the same time, and then released our first record in 2010.
Wow. So we're all playing music together back then? Okay.
All the time. And the first record, which is like just self-titled, is more like upbeat. It's really bright, like kind of like party rock kind in a sense. And it found like a local fan base quick, and it's pushed us off into touring. And over the couple years of touring on it, you know, we started doing festivals and we started getting into we found ourselves into like jam band festivals, and like we didn't really like grow up on that stuff, so it was like we kind of like we're like, whoa, are we one of these?
See, that's literally what Steve and I were talking about right before this, because I was describing you and your band to him, and he's like a jam band, and I was like, no, and he's like, no, it's like a jam band.
But wait. But wait, there's more, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's what because we were describing it.
Listen to much of them, but that was the way you described it. Yeah, like how I thought of them.
Yeah.
I think it's how we came up in Austin and then started touring on that kind of on that vibe. You know, it's like big party rock, fun energy, lots of guitar solos.
So that's what you mean by party rock,
and stuff. Yeah. But then we wanted to take a turn. And like we parted ways with a keyboard player that was a big part of that early sound. An important part of that early sound is like, you know, it was part of him. And we made our second record was much darker. It was like that's when we really got into like psychedelic rock, you know. And it was like a concept record and had like, you know, this impression of both our journeys on tour and like a comment on like the South and like what the South could become and all this kind of stuff. It was if the first record was a zig, it was like as much of a zag as we could do.
Interesting.
And that record was called Space is Still the Place. And we've kind of been in that mode for a little while. We made a set of records that were a little more icy and cold and like sort of distant and removed. And so now we're trying to like zag again into something a little more visceral and a little more immediate. So we've just been starting a new kind of concept record where there's like, we kind of have two character bands. One of them is like a stoner metal band called Weed Martyr. And one of them is like a late night kind of club band called Let's Go Grief, based on like this club we play in Montreal that we really love. That's like in a basement. It's like the kind of place that you would want to just see a disco band play until 4 a.m. or something. So we kind of are writing songs in like both veins and how they're trying to connect them, you know? So we'll have some of, and we'll have the first little chapter of Weed Martyr, like maybe in a couple months. But you know, that's what we've been up to there.
Yeah. So how do you discover those two sounds? Those are two different sounds, like you said, and trying to marry the two.
Yeah.
So how did you discover that? Okay. Is that just from evolving and playing together and kind of discovering each other's sound? Or is that something that you kind of hey, like someone brought that idea to the group and was like, hey, let's try this. So how describe that process?
Jackie and I are really musically omnivorous. You know, we're kind of like constantly getting into just something different. We probably don't even listen to a lot of music like in our genre, you know? Like I like going on deep dives, like of something that like I wouldn't even make anything like right now I'm on a Bonnie Raitt deep dive, you know?
Really?
And it doesn't make me write Bonnie Raitt songs or anything. It's just kind of like I get something from it and then it'll come out like 2 years later in another way, you know? And I don't even know what I'm doing maybe, but it's
so what's an example of that? Like something else that's come up for you?
So like the Weed Martyr thing came from like a few years ago, we all got into like the big stoner metal bands like Sleep and a band from Arkansas, Pallbearer, we were all into at the same time. And this is stuff we just listened together in the van and we'd like talk about it. And, you know, of course we're into like the earliest iterations like Sabbath. And as kids, we were like into metal. Like I grew up on like Pantera and stuff as like a Texan guitar player kid. Pantera was just about as good as it gets. So it's like I had the metal stuff kind of in me somewhere, and for us it's about finding like a way to express it that's still true to us and it isn't just like mimicry or something, you know.
That's so interesting because you have all these different sounds, and then even your solo project too was an entirely different sound, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about your solo project sound versus like the Bright Light Social Hour sound.
At some point I wrote a set of songs that were like kind of way softer than Bright Light. Pretty much anything that we do is like, we want a crowd to have an energetic response. Yeah. And I had written a set of songs that were kind of more like music that was in like my house growing up. Like my folks came from Southern California. They were like Southern California kids in the 70s, like listening to Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles and stuff like that. So I listened to a lot of that stuff when I was growing up just through them. And it's like music that feels like comfort food to me, you know? And I was just going through one of my big storms in my life or whatever and wanted to make like a comfort food record. So I was like, well, I'll take, you know, the soft rock of my childhood years and try to make it psychedelic, try to make it expansive or make it a little more infinite, a little more distorted a little bit too, maybe.
But still like who you are and your sound and true to you. And that's really interesting. So those things that you're going through, is that part of your writing process as well? And when you're creating music, is that just become, so everybody has their different outlets, you know, some people have their vices, and with people, like you said, with music, that was an outlet for you where, as you already had kind of, because some people can go the angry route too and just want to, you know, bang on some drums and get out that metal, but you went a much like softer route in that sense of as an outlet for you. Yeah.
It's usually like the music I'm writing is in some form like autobiographical. So at that point, I was mourning the suicide of Jackie's brother, who was our manager for like the first few years of our time on the road. And I was going through relationship problems and all that too. So I was like craving something like comfort food, you know, I just wanted like to make soft music, you know. But like the last few years, you know, living through, you know, the Trump administration and a lot of the just failures of American life, you know, we've wanted to make much angrier music. So it kind of goes, it responds, some of these things just respond to where we're at, what we're up to, how we feel about things.
Yeah. Now, how does your fans and your demographic, do they respond to that as well? Have they been taking those zigs and zags with you?
I think, no, not always.
Really?
Yeah. I think we lose a bunch of them all the time and then gain new ones. It's like, there's constantly like it in and out. Like at shows sometimes, like I feel like I can guess like, you're probably like the first record and you're probably here for the most recent stuff. It's probably, I mean, I may be wrong half the time, but I don't know if we keep everyone, and I don't know if that's the point really for us. You know, we're not necessarily we're not much of a pop band. And I love pop music. It's not meant to be critical or anything. It's just, Jackie and I get really excited just following our muse and just like trying to be a little surprising. It's when we were in college, we listened to a lot of like hardcore and punk and like just, you know, experimental, more avant-garde music. And that like willingness to just kind of cut against the grain is just still with us in some way, even though we play much more accessible music than that.
Yeah. So you're a rebellious kid. Like, does that come from like rebellion and just wanting to do something different all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a suburban mentality too. It's like you're just kind of like disaffected and like high school or whatever. You're like, I don't know, Texas is so conservative and I'm mad at my dad. And blah. You know, it's like whatever your reason. You know, it's like people have all sorts of reasons for it.
Yeah. But you still have the influences and all of that. Like you said, Fleetwood Mac. We were joking earlier about your Spotify. I don't know if y'all did. There was an algorithm thing. I don't know what would you call it, Steve? It was like an AI. It was like this AI test that you could take. I'm not going to link it because apparently the Russians are tracking it. So what everybody said, I don't know. It literally got like DMs or like the Russians have your information. It was like,
and if they do, whoever wrote that program knows American culture so well. I really doubt it.
So what it was is like, right, you like entered in your information, like your Spotify, like just connect your Spotify and it like read your playlist. It read like your most common things that you played. It was so spot on.
Yeah.
And I have to read Curtis's because it was really funny. Because Curtis DM'd me and was like, oh my God, this was mine. And it was literally hilarious. Mine was pretty spot on too. Because it pulled literally like the things that I had listened to the most. Here we go.
Yeah, so it catches you at the things that you'll just like repeat a lot, you know?
Yeah, so the things that you do when you're not, like you don't think anyone's watching. Like I sometimes listen to like a song 5 times in a row and don't even realize like, and then this guy, Steve, will be sitting and like screenshot. He's like, oh, I like that song too. And he'll send me a text. I'm like, I've been discovered. Someone knows that I'm now listening to this song 10 times in a row.
Oh, you can see who's
yeah, you can see. I forget that that's on. That's so, because you forget that people can do that. And like they used to have a feature, and I'm sure they still do, where you can like hide. Yeah, but then
I have mine turned off.
Do you?
Yeah, but I still like creep on people.
Yeah.
I do not have mine. So if y'all want to creep on me, you can see everything. You can see me listen to, you know. Yeah.
I had to turn it off when I got really into Casey Musgrave's Golden Hour because I just didn't want people to know how much I listened to that record. Nothing. I mean, I'm saying it obviously. I'm not that embarrassed about it, but it was gratuitous.
But was it like one particular song or was it the
record,
the whole album
on the repeat?
She's pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
She is pretty awesome.
All right, so Curtis's Spotify analyzer said he was a retiree, softball league boomer, relaxation, wet ass, bad taste.
You know, I only really resent the boomer part of that.
Retired? Have you ever played softball?
No.
No?
No.
But you're a retired softball.
Yeah.
Softball league player. And then the wet ass bad. Did you listen to a lot of Megan Thee Stallion? Cardi B?
Just the basics. Yeah. I just know the hits. No deep hits. Cuts with them.
But yeah, and then obviously called you out on your Fleetwood Mac, Tom Petty. But again, that's not something I think I would be. It's some solid people. It just made me laugh. And that was hilarious with all that kind of stuff. And it's just amazing. All the different apps that are out there now. And what's y'all's kind of, with everything coming out, and I know, like you said, with music, and you guys have a lot of synthesizers, and do you use a lot of technology, and or you kind of just stick with the classics with your music, or has that changed throughout the years?
That ebbs and flows a little too. Mm-hmm. Like we'll get on big kicks where we're building like a modular synth rig and doing a lot of sequencing things and having kind of like the drummer like locked into time and then sending like, you know, time clock information out to a bunch of other synths or even our guitar pedals. But now we're kind of like, you know, we're going through one of our phases where we're just like, no, just turn the amps up and like play loud and like, you know, be more of a rock band. Cause I think maybe it's even a response to this last year of like not having an immediate relationship with listeners and not being able to just like play in a room with people. It's like I really want to just have the like playing guitar and singing and like loudly and play with friends. You know, it's like we've had to play a lot less with each other because there were a lot of weeks where we were, you know, kind of self-quarantining and just not seeing each other, you know. So like yes and no.
So you told me too, you have like 10 years of all this different, like you said, sound, like all different types of experience with music besides just performing and doing all these other things. So what other things in addition to, like, I guess take us through your career? Because I know, like you said, we've just touched on what you've done with your solo project, what you've done with the Bright Light Social Hour, but everything to kind of bring you to this point.
My favorite things to do are still just performing music and making records. But I'll always fill in the gaps with something or another. Like, and for me, like I enjoy engineering records and mixing, mastering, producing. I really like working with songwriters and kind of helping them hone songs or just develop them together or something. Especially working with people that I have a goal at least of trying to slightly expand representation. I think there's plenty of people who look like me in the music industry, and I would like to help people who don't look like me have a little more of a space in it. So I try to make some effort, at least on the margin, to do so, because I think it's just personally important to me. But yeah, mostly like if I'm not performing or making a record, it would be like involved in production.
So can you expand on that too? When you're seeing people that don't look like you, so you're talking about like people of color,
women and people of color. Women? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt that the music industry, just like most industries in this world really, are white male dominated, and that's bad. And it should be fixed as soon as possible. And I feel like it should be an all hands on deck kind of thing to fix it, you know, because I think we'll get the best results out of culture, economics, if we have more ideas, you know, from everyone.
So how are you using that? I guess, are you putting that out there? And I mean, I guess, how could people find you to do that? If they're interested in doing that, are you kind of seeking them out? Or are they finding you? Or because you seem very passionate about it. So
I'm passionate about it. I feel like a lot of my views maybe come out in my songs and records themselves. That's kind of like the first place I'll put it. Production, it's like it's taken me a while to develop the confidence to not feel like I'm like charging someone money for a service they couldn't get better elsewhere. So like I don't do a lot of like advertising of that. It's just if someone who's listened to my music kind of likes the vibe of it and they reach out to me, like I'll work with them if it like feels right for both of us or something like that. But I don't spend a lot of time like, hey, let me produce your record, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can see that, especially with what you have going on with your, like, with just Bright Light Social Hour alone. But that's amazing. I could tell like you were really passionate about that, and it's something that, I mean, thank you on behalf of in the music community. And well, because there's a lot of people that
no gratitude,
but there's like, people that don't, like you said, they kind of just go in. And I think especially in that time during these times where it becomes more like people are just looking out for themselves, and that's a very easy thing to do. And I think that there's a space for that as well, you know, if you have to survive. And that's why it's great. We have HAAM and Austin Music Foundation and all these amazing organizations that are looking out for people. So I do think there's a time and a place, but then there's some people that have been okay that doesn't necessarily you know, affect them. So when you have someone that is an advocate that recognizes that, is able to at least be a resource, I think that's huge. So that's really, really cool.
I think it makes all of us better too. Like more ideas and more points of view. Like I feel like it's not so much like I think it is a fairness issue, but it's not just a fairness issue. It's also like it improves the culture, you know, and it doesn't take away from white men or like traditional power or anything. It balances it out with just more ways of looking at the world, you know?
Yeah. So you've been in Austin. How would you say like the culture is here, and is it really conducive? Just from some of the artists that have been here, they're always saying how supportive it is. Do you feel like that's been a pretty supportive community in that sense?
I feel like I've received a lot of support, but Austin, like a lot of places, just has its pitfalls, and it has its strengths and its weaknesses. Mm-hmm. It's like we love our music, and there's a lot of cultural institutions and even economic ones that support it. Like HAAM and SIMS are like, that's how I get my health insurance. SIMS is how I get my mental health care. Like those are deeply important to me, critical really. My band went through band therapy for like a year and a half through SIMS. Like what a unique, beautiful thing to be able to do. Every time I'm in another city and I'm like talking to people about like some of the things that Austin musicians get, like the concept of a band going to therapy together is like, it's bananas, you know?
Yeah. So tell people about that. Cause I think, I mean, people that aren't familiar with SIMS.
Yeah.
And, you know, cause so HAAM is for the health, you know, Health
Right.
Alliance for Austin musicians. And that's for all the health insurance, but SIMS is for mental health. So how is that whole process? Like you said, cause that isn't something that's pretty widespread everywhere.
So first with HAAM, you know, every year, what like they walk me through the process of finding the right plan on healthcare.gov, you know, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, whatever we're calling it these days. And it's enormously helpful. And they also provide additional subsidies on top of whatever subsidies you might get based on your income. So, you know, for a lot of musicians that are typically contract workers, our incomes can fluctuate wildly. Some years we can have a great year, some years we can have a bad year. HAAM really helps kind of like even it out and make sure we're kind of getting the healthcare we need. They also provide like dental care and like I get my glasses and stuff through HAAM. And SIMS, mental health care has been really important for our band because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, Jackie, my bandmate, his brother, took his life in early 2015, and it devastated us. It created ripple effects through our lives and our relationships for years. Depression, anxiety, things that you could probably call PTSD. And, you know, we've all needed personal therapy. Mm-hmm. At times when we've come into like more pronounced differences with each other, we've needed band therapy. And SIMS has had the flexibility to not only provide, you know, what is their sort of mainline service is, you know, finding you like an appropriate therapist or a psychiatrist or something, but they were also flexible enough to pair us with someone who wanted to try, you know, group band therapy. So we would all like sit in a room, like, and it's like, you know, I almost said soprano style, but it was always just Tony. But like sit in a room and look at each other and be like, these are the things I've been really wanting to tell you that I like haven't been able to tell you in band practice because I just want to be like a cool bro, you know, and just like hold it in. And that was powerful for us. We learned a lot about ourselves that way. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Cause I feel like even in any type of work environment, people have these squabbles, but they go home, you know? And like you said, it's like, you can't do that necessarily with a band because you are traveling and you are around people so much. So to have that kind of bridge is really special. I didn't know it went to that extent. Like they had band therapy.
Yeah. But to circle back, like I think Austin has its set of challenges too.
Mm-hmm.
It's growing so fast, and a lot of the growth feels and probably I should probably study it a little more, feels to be mostly in like high income tech related areas. And I think that's created a housing market and like a change of culture that's affected musicians a lot in negative ways. And I think Austin could probably do more, and certainly the state of Texas could do more to kind of provide like a little bit more of an equitable environment. Just more housing, really. I mean, Austin just needs to be like building to the moon. I feel slightly ranty right now because it's like I get a lot of this like you know, you'll like go out to like an Austin club or something, and it's like, you know, you get a lot of people who are like, oh man, fuck the condos and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, really, we need like 3 times more of it. and that would kind of keep housing prices a little more stable for all of us. We need to dramatically increase supply because so many people want to come here. It's not bad that people want to come here. It's bad that housing supply is limited so only the rich can buy. Mm-hmm. Like that's the part of the economic system that's failing the rest of us. And you know, like Austin, the state of Texas, the federal government, they should all do more about that. If we want more of an egalitarian society where people can get up and like do the things they want to do, start the businesses they want to make, create the things they want to create.
It's interesting with, like you said, everything like the San Francisco, the Californians, they're all coming here. Mm-hmm. Even with, you know, you look at Tesla, and I mean, I see it. I work with some real estate agents, and I see, I mean, they're getting, when it was really hitting, it was like, I mean, it's still there, but I mean, they're getting like 60 offers on one house that are going above asking price because there's a shortage of houses, like you said. So it's not normal. It's not something that, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Yeah. Which is unfortunate. Yeah. And it's the creative community, like you said. The reason why people are moving here is the reason why. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was like this LA couple that's like, oh, you know, we wanted to, you know, we moved to Austin and we love it here. But it's still like they're escaping almost like their government, and just like you said, it's very liberal. We're open here. People can go do things. So it's opened up that window of opportunity for people like, okay, you're able to work at home, and now you're able to work from anywhere. And so where do they want to live? Where there's no state income tax, and they've heard a lot about Austin. It's a cool city, and not knocking. I agree with you. I'm like not knocking people that come here and, you know, support the city, but it is when it's just like that chain of events. We didn't have a South by. We didn't have all these things to really boost our economy to kind of keep everybody afloat. And then obviously a pandemic. So, I mean, was talking to my friend yesterday who's a music agent in LA, and he was saying how everyone's moving out of LA. He's like, rent's super cheap for the first time because he's like, people are leaving and I can find cheap places. So he's like, I've been fortunate to live there and not have to spend a lot. Yeah. So,
you know, California is a good example because it's a place that kind of did a lot of things right, and it's a beautiful place to be, and a lot of amazing people go there, and they still have, you know, California will be fine. You know, if you adjust for if you looked at them as a country, they'd have like in the top 10 largest economies in the world, just them, you know. But they've had it really wrong on housing and have tried to keep their cities kind of like low, and it's created like a housing thing that then is forcing all these folks out here and reproducing the same housing problem, you know? And it's really, I think we just need to look more how the East Coast did it and build up. And you know, all the sprawl, like suburbs and all that stuff is obviously contributes to climate change. You know, you don't want people driving around in more cars and driving around in more places and stuff if we're concerned about that. So it's like, if we're going to accommodate all these people moving to Austin, we need to be building housing as soon as. How did we get here? I feel like I'm like this is like a city council speech or something.
Yes, you're up right now. Your call is up. Oh, that's fine. But this is interesting. Like you said, this isn't. Talk about more than you're more than just music, Curtis. Okay, there's a lot going on up there. It's okay to talk about these other things because it's important, and it's what's affecting the economy and the community, and especially the music community. Because, like you said, it is a huge factor, and people. And you know, Jonathan Terrell was here, and he talked about the same thing about how it's like the reason why people are moving here, and we talk about that with like Nashville is another place, but that's. You know, there's a lot of business there. There's a lot of agencies and things like that. Whereas Austin, it is like, as he was saying, the live music capital of the world, but those live musicians now cannot survive. Whereas before they used to be able to play, you know, a couple nights a week, and everything's changed.
Yeah. It used to be a sleepier city. It's not anymore. And that's not a bad thing.
And you've been here since you said you were born here. Yeah. Did you venture off, or have you, like you said, you went to college?
Just through tour. Yeah. I like went to college in the area and everything. I've like kind of stayed rooted my whole life, but you know, tour gave me like the escape valve to see at least North America, and you know, we've been everywhere pretty much everywhere in the United States, and a lot of the places in Canada, and a couple times in Mexico. Yet to go to Europe, I feel like maybe next year,
Oh, that's coming. I feel like they'll love y'all with everything. It's hard. I think, like you said, I lived in San Antonio, and then I went to school in Mobile, Alabama.
Oh, wow.
So that was a culture shock.
I bet.
For me, being Spanish and Mexican, and then going there, and everybody was white and black.
Yeah.
So it was, So like you said, that was kind of, I just wanted to get out of San Antonio, which was predominantly Hispanic at the time. And then that was my escape valve. But then I went there, and I'd never experienced racism before, and then experienced it there. Yeah. Which was interesting. But then, and it's interesting too, because even then coming back, so I left once I was there, did that. And it was a lot of racism from other Hispanics, from Cubans and Puerto Ricans that went to my school.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. So it was like, I didn't realize in their eyes that there was like this hierarchy of Hispanics to them. Yeah. And it was wild. I mean, I remember sitting at it was my senior year, because I played basketball, as our banquet that we had for all the athletes, and the tennis coach made like a racist joke about Mexicans in front of everyone. I was like the only Mexican at the school, so everyone turned and looked at me, and it was super awkward. So it was just goodness. Yeah, it was just weird moments, and but I feel like now, ignorance was bliss. Mm-hmm. I didn't know, and I think there's still a lot of that. And I think that's the Black Lives Matter kind of prove that, to show that there's still a lot of ignorance that's out there, but it also brought up a lot of stuff for me to deal with, because I was like, whoa, okay, I can't even go help other people or work through that when I still need to process the things that I went through. But so I hear you when you got to kind of test the waters and see everything. And then I lived in Dallas for a little bit. I did live in San Diego, which I loved. Yeah. Loved San Diego.
Easy city to live in.
Yeah. You've been to San Diego?
Many times.
I love it there.
Yeah.
The weather's perfect. People are
nothing
cool
like
and
the
chill.
weather. It's crazy.
Yeah. You're not, I remember the first time I was driving, and you're used to leaving your car on, because you have to leave the AC on. I was like, wait, I can turn my car off and put the windows down.
It's climate control all the time outside.
Yeah. 70 degrees all year round. Have you been to San Diego? It's amazing.
What position did you play?
I was a 3-4. Right so on. I was a really dirty player. Yeah. Really dirty player. My coach.
Handsy, aggressive.
Just I would foul out. My coach was, I was not, but I also wore makeup to games.
You're 90s style?
I was, I just, anything I could do. Dennis Rodman was my favorite player. Yeah. So seeing him do his thing, and I loved watching him, and just I learned a lot. We had a player on my team in high school who was all state everything. Dirtiest player ever. So I learned so much just from going up against her and the things that she would do. And it was so of course I took those with me to college, my little dirty player toolkit. It would bust things out. But it was, playing basketball and playing sports was completely different. But I never had the connection to music kind of came from, I listened to things kind of growing up, but then had LimeWire and all those things, started doing all the legal downloads and downloading all these songs, and then kind of got expanded to music, because that wasn't something that you could really know unless you had the radio or anything like that. But it was interesting. But it was happy. I was really happy to get back to Austin, because I'd only been to Austin a couple of times, visiting when I was in San Antonio, and Austin was just the place that was South by, and I got to escape, and kind of music was the only thing that kind of kept me sane through everything. And even when I still kind of am a loner. I kind of go and do my own thing. Yeah, I was talking about this with someone over the weekend, because I went to Fire Festival by myself. I'm kind of just used to doing things I went to Hawaii by myself for 2 weeks. I'm kind of just used to doing these different adventures, especially with music sometimes, because I like to talk to people and like to wander around. And if you're with someone and maybe that's not their jam, then it's just okay, I'm just going to go do my own thing, and I'll meet people there. And Fire Festival took a hard turn.
Yeah, that's the notorious one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the real.
What was your experience like?
There's a whole episode on it, so you have to watch it. It's good. I think it's pretty good. But yeah, I was one of the first people there. And it was worse than what they showed. Like, I don't know if you saw the documentaries and stuff.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah, it was worse. It was way worse.
Yeah.
Than what they showed. So I was just happy to get out of there and had some PTSD from that, where I was like, wow, I guess because I was being interviewed. I got interviewed to go on, like, do you remember MTV True Life back in the day?
Sounds something
they used
like
to have.
it, yeah.
I made Steve watch an episode of it one time.
I watched it growing up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were watching like some weird True Life thing, but yeah, they were doing like a true life or true crime series about Fire Festival. So they brought me in to talk to me about it, and then the other two people that were supposed to be in the series like canceled. So it was just me for 8 hours being grilled by this interviewer, and she had me like crying, and I was like, God. I'm going to be a meme on TV. And I was happy that they pulled it. They didn't end up airing it, thank God, because then I would have been labeled as the Fire Festival girl.
Well, good on them.
Yeah. Oh, I was relieved. I'm still like crossing my fingers that footage they don't turn around and be like, all right, here, 5-year anniversary.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Fire Festival. But yeah. See, I don't know how we got on this conversation now. Talking
just following the muse.
Random things. Yeah. But yeah, just that whole kind of loner mentality. But music, we were going to talk. Well, I was curious because with psychedelic rock and psychedelics and all that, but music and psychedelics, I feel like have been, I don't really ever talk about. I think that's probably like a common question that people always wonder about me. They're like, so do you partake in anything when you're at shows? And like mushrooms are its own thing, I think. And I remember like doing mushrooms for the first time is just a completely different kind of animal compared to all the other things that are out there. But it was something that I listened to. I'm not even sure if Khruangbin. Khruangbin is like one of my favorite bands, and I did mushrooms for it was my second time ever doing them, and I did it to that show that was by myself.
Wow.
At that show. It was here in Austin, and I went, it was at Emo's, and there was like this group of guys, and I was just there like setting up, and this guy's like, hey, you want some mushrooms? I was like, oh, I'm good. Like, thanks. Creepy guy just offering me some weird chocolate. No, I'm not going to take that. But then he like told me the story. He's like, these are like my high school buddies. Like, we're all here, and they were like older guys. He's like, we like discovered Khruangbin. We were in Joshua Tree, and we did mushrooms for 3 days and just listened to this music. And I was like, okay, now you might have sold me a little bit. Cause he's like, so we're all here, we're doing it again.
Some connection.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, like I'll do it. I'll do some. So I ended up like doing some mushrooms there, and then it was weird. Cause it's like, then all of a sudden they just disappeared. They were gone. Like they weren't there with, the show started and they're gone. So it was just me having this trip by myself with the band, eyes closed, the most beautiful things. And I just had the most amazing time, and ended up driving to the top of, where Lamar Union is? And there's that the movie theater.
Right.
So I drove to the top of that parking garage, and I just sat there in my car and listened to the music and sat on the hood of my car and just tripped out to the skyline.
That seems perfect.
It was great. It was like my first, but that was the constant, because you always have, I don't know about you, but for me, I always have this like one common, something that comes up for me.
Yeah.
And it's not even that I'm searching for it, but like in that moment, it was like music is always there for you.
Yeah.
No matter where I go, what I do, it was like music's the constant for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Deeply. I find with like mushrooms for me needs like a buddy, and the buddy could be music or a band or literally a person or something. But if I feel like alone in that situation, it can go bad, and maybe maybe LSD is different in that, where it feels like I'm a little more comfortable in my brain or something, and I'm like just exploring parts of it that I haven't really gotten around to lately or something. But I've gotten a little more careful with it in the last few years. Like I had like a weird thing about me is I had a heart attack at 33, just like randomly out of nowhere. Like I've never been a tobacco smoker. Like I don't know, like I've been kind of the same weight my whole life. Like, I was vegetarian for a number of years. It was truly like just a genetic bomb, you know?
Wow.
And so like that kind of made me like pretty cautious. Like after that, like I stay away from like a lot of the harder stuff, but you know, like the general category of psychedelics are like something that it's like a toolkit for me. It's like cannabis, any kind of weed is good for either riding out time, you know, like putting myself in, like this last year, I had to kind of smoke myself through the last year. Like
that's what you were saying.
I'm like, I'm weaning off of it a little bit right now because I finally have a lot of stuff to do. Like, it's like I you know, have some shows coming up to prepare for in the summer. And it's like, I have records to complete and stuff, but like, I really just, a lot of it, I was living in an RV out on a hill in Wimberley, and I just kind of had to like find a way to enjoy every day. And a good way to do that for me was just smoking weed all day, because like it put me very in touch with, it sounds like a thing that a pot smoker would say. It put me very in touch with just the trees, the cows on my shared cattle lease, the plants that I was growing in the garden. You know, it's like I felt them a little more viscerally. Time, like I was on their time instead of my time, where I felt like dissatisfied and like struggling and stuff like that. But I think it is ultimately a mediating thing, and can take us a little bit out of, or this is, at least for me, can take me a little bit out of connecting deeply with people, or you know, family, or work, you know, being like on the ball. Everyone's a little different with that, of course. But as far as the more like deep exploratory things, you know, like mushrooms, LSD has always been transformative for me.
Really?
You know, it's like maybe once a year or something, I'll like get together with like a small group of like true confidants or something. And it always like, it's so long for me. It takes like 20 hours out of my life or something. So I really have to be prepared for it. Like, yeah. I can't have like lunch with my mom the next day or something, you know? But like I'll end up learning things that, you know, or like seeing things that I didn't quite see before. And I don't think it's like, oh wow, like, you know, mushrooms or acid will make you like a better artist or anything like that. Right. I don't think it quite works like that. But there's a lot of evidence that's forming that like it can be good. You know, some of these things can be good in helping depression, helping anxiety, helping PTSD. There's like that Michael Pollan book from a few years ago, like a couple years back, How to Change Your Mind, where like it's the guy who wrote Omnivore's Dilemma. He's like written a lot of like that kind of like New York Timesy, like somewhere between, you know, popular culture and science, you know, like how to be in the world these days. But he wrote a whole book about psychedelics, and it was all like the latest studies on some of these things. And it's like remarkably effective against certain mental health challenges, you know? And so I've experienced some of it. Like I think, you know, maybe more so for me, LSD is kind of like the thing, because it's like I'm a little clearer, a little less in my body, you know, which, I mean, that can be good too. But if I'm out there searching for something, that clarity is nice. Yeah,
that's interesting, because that's the one I've done LSD twice. And I did it on a cruise ship, which,
well, I don't know.
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I'm one of those people too. I'm kind of like a happy drunk. I'm a happy, there isn't stuff that like comes out for me in those types of situations. And so I found myself, you know, my friend at the time did not necessarily have the best kind of trips with that. So I found myself being there for her and holding space. So one of those things I want to do on my own, like you said, with people in a different setting, and trying that, because it's never been something I can just do for myself. But mushrooms for me have been that kind of space where I was like, okay, this is different. This is cool. And I'm able to kind of go there in myself. And it's just telling Steve, I feel like I'm getting called more and more to like do it, get like open up my heart and start working through some stuff that I need to work on because I feel like it's time.
Yeah. It's a remarkable antidepressant for me personally. I remember the very first time, it's like I had just moved back to Austin from like, went to college, like just in Georgetown, Texas, just up the road at Southwestern. And
you went to Southwestern?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I almost went there.
Yeah, really?
To play basketball. I did like a visit and everything. It's a beautiful school.
It is a lovely school.
Beautiful
All those
school.
old buildings, it's like Hogwarts or something.
And those kids party.
Yeah,
like Southwestern kids, shout out all you Southwestern folks, y'all party.
A lot of folks in the Austin music scene. My bandmate Jack,
really?
Walker Lukens.
He went to Southwestern too?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great school.
They're around. Yeah, no doubt loved it there. But like, I was like, I'm going to move to Austin and just like get a job at like waiting tables and like getting bands and all that kind of stuff. And I was really in love with this gal just right after college. And like, we moved in together and stuff. And she pretty quickly, I think, decided that like I wasn't the one for her, but like didn't know how to tell me for a few months.
But even though y'all were together in college? And all that
like
time?
Just towards the end.
Oh, okay.
And so like, I was in maybe my first real bout of depression I had felt in my whole life. Right. And it was like my birthday that year, which is Halloween. Right. Scorpio.
Oh, that's a great,
and so
great
like
birthday.
that night, it was my first sort of mushrooms experience, and we all like dressed up in drag and like ate mushrooms and like went downtown. And the whole next month, it was like just a wash of grace. Like I rode out the breakup, like the slow moving breakup with slight detachment in all the best ways. Like I was like, okay, just like time moves on, and there's some data-based evidence to back up that it's a powerful antidepressant for some people. Not saying, don't rush out.
We're not endorsing.
Don't rush out and willy-nilly do it.
And doing that.
But there's certainly worse things to do. It's like it's funny. Alcohol is so lightly regulated, but is probably like a much more severe drug than most of the things we're talking about.
100%. I agree with you. I haven't really been drinking. Steve knows this. It's crazy how the weight just falls off when you stop drinking. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a downer for me. I'm more of like an uppers kind of person, like caffeine and things that keep me up. That's even like, like with weed and things like that. It's hard for me because it's just the downer.
Yeah.
I have to, but yeah, my brain, once you go there and like I've had 3 concussions. So
from sports related situations,
one of them was the other 2 were from like car accidents, but it's like once you've had one, it was pretty severe. Yeah, it was like, but that was something that wasn't but that's, you're more prone to a depression and having those things. And so it's like, you really have to take extra care of yourself and mental health. And it's a real thing. And I think that's something, one of my friends, he did like a whole mental health panel, but it is something that everybody struggles with. And just because they're not vocal about it. And I think especially in the musician scene where, like you said, that is a drug for some people, getting on stage and feeling that rush and your livelihood. And that was tough for everyone. But I know for me, mental health, it's like some of those times where I know like it's not me. I think if anything that I've learned, I'm like, this is not me. This does not define me. Like I'm just going through it right now.
Right.
I'm going to get through it. I'm going to go through it and finding those things that make it, because I'm also a certified life coach. So I have that like piece to me. So I know I have the tools, but that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have a roommate, because I know like, okay, I can't hang out in my underwear. I mean, I could, but I'm not. I've never done that, for the record, Steve.
What's Steve's perspective on this?
I sleep all day anyways.
He does. He doesn't leave his room sometimes. I have to go in and do like just checks. You good? Okay, cool. There's Steve goes, gives me a kiss, and then walks out. But
it's lovely.
But it's true. But like for me, that was one of the biggest reasons why I got same thing with the dog.
Yeah.
You can't do those things. So it's like finding those things for mental health and finding those ways that you can pull yourself out of whatever it is that you know, and it's not defining you by any means.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the biggest stigma is like, oh, it's weakness, especially in male culture.
The stigma is terrible. And that's the worst part. It's one of the worst parts of it, because it makes it hard to seek help when you really need it. It's like, can't our brains be so complex that we can't quite fathom them? So sometimes we fall short of figuring out exactly what we need. You know, it's like, that's actually in the long run, like a kind of a beautiful thing. Like, we're such sophisticated creatures in a way that like our brains sometimes elude us or whatever. And if you need a little help, like of some kind, you know, it can be part of your story instead of like a dark footnote, you know?
Yeah. I went through something that I haven't even really talked about, which I'll talk about maybe at a different time. But it was like my first real bout of depression that I went through, and it was terrible. But going through that, I guess I could just say it, but I was sexually assaulted, and that was something that, you know, was triggering for me. It never, like once your brain, that's what I think people don't understand either, is when that happens, your brain is making new synapses and your brain's traveling down a road that it's never been before. So it's like, once it's gone down that, once those paths have been created, it can go down there again.
Yes.
But I didn't know how to get out of it. I was having panic attacks. I was having all these things that I'd never dealt with because my brain had, like you said, the brain is super complex. So I'd never felt those things and done those things. And this was when I lived in Dallas at the time. And I remember like going to a therapist, and she put me, I didn't want to go on antidepressants. I didn't want to go on anything, because I was like, no, like I can get through this. And I just couldn't pull myself out of it. And so I went on antidepressants. And like you said, just to get the wheel started again, like just to get the wheels turning again. Yeah. And it really helped, but it was like, I was a zombie though. Yeah. For like, I think I was on them for like 4 or 5 months. Yeah. And then, I just wasn't consistent with, like, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I was ready for something more. And that's kind of like, that's the precursor. Like, I don't ever really talk about that, but that was the precursor for me, like becoming a life coach. Because I was like, I don't see people getting help. Like, I was going, and this therapist was just collecting a check every time I came in. It was like 45 minutes. She punched the clock, collected her $200. And I walked out, and I was like, wow, like, what am I learning from this? Like, what's the next step after this? Because it's, this therapist isn't helping me. And that's when I discovered like life coaching and like someone helping me like get through that. And so I went literally through that whole process pretty much just for myself, to give myself the tools to learn like mental health. And that's why knowing my triggers, knowing what's helpful for me to kind of go through and work through, and knowing like, okay, maybe having a dog, having a roommate, being active, eating healthy, like I have to do those things. If I don't, I'm going to sink back into a bad place. Yeah. So I know I just threw a lot at you. It was kind of heavy, but
it's constantly astounds me the amount of women in our culture that have gone through that trauma. Yeah. It's embarrassing to be a part of that culture, you know? Yeah. So thank you for sharing it with me.
I know, not to get, because I haven't talked about it. No, I agree with you. It sucks because I see it like, you're right. It's just not, it's something that we constantly as women have to just put up with. Yeah. And it's not fair, but it's like, what are we going to do? You know, I was telling Steve just yesterday, I was at Sprouts, and there was this guy that was like just harassing me. You know, it was literally there just to buy groceries. Right. Was not like dressed up, was not seeking any type of attention. And this guy just would not let go of like, he like wanted to buy my groceries. So I was like, I'm good. Good God. Yeah. Have you ever offered to buy groceries?
You know, no one's ever offered to buy my groceries. You know, that says it all in a like a short little thing is like that's.
Yeah, it was wild. And they were like, the people at Sprout, it's like I go there every week. Yeah. You know, I go there, like go get my groceries. And this guy was just like standing there, and I was like, you know, I'm literally just trying to buy groceries, you know? And because I was like, I know that if I let this guy buy he's like, it's like a thing, you know, like they do at Starbucks where they like, you buy someone's drink ahead of them. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't actually see them and you're not hitting on them, you know? It's just that kind of culture. And then sure enough, like the people at Sprouts were like, do you need us to like walk you to your car? You know, are you okay?
Well,
so
good
it's
for them.
Something like that, you know, it's just like,
it helps.
It's something. I did this thing on my Instagram one time. I need to find it, but it was talking about like, if you, as a female, like if females, they did this mass survey and it was like, if females could do something that they did not like, that men probably take for granted, like what would they do if there was no consequences? Like if they knew that they were safe in any situation. And it was like the number one thing was like women would just walk alone at night, which is terrible. Yeah. You know, but it's just, it's definitely not something that I just, you know, you see it. And I know it's kind of stigmatized too. And with musicians and with female artists and kind of, you know, that's what I said when you were getting passionate about it, I really responded and reacted to that because like I said, it's nice to have advocates and people. I believe in that
because it absolutely has to change, and like it has to change fast. Like it's an emergency because people like have their lives impacted with trauma and have to sort through trauma for years from just a moment. And I think that makes it an emergency. Just
yeah. Oh, you're right. I think. And it's something like, you know, I think I'm okay. And like you said, I haven't like talked about it in a while. Like it's been years. That happened when I was in Dallas. And so it's not something that, you know, when it happened, it was one of like the lowest times of my life, like literally the lowest time. And it was something that, you know, when I was, I did have, that's why mental health and therapy is so important. And I had this amazing, I left that therapist that was just checking in, checking out. Yeah. Ended up having, you know, this whole like lawsuit that resulted from what happened. Like, it was crazy. And it was even more traumatizing to the nth degree. That was last thing I wanted, you know? So going through that process, I had to go to this different therapist and the attorney sent me to them. And this guy was just, I still think about what he said to this day. And it was interesting because you touched on it with something that you said too about like you know, it's part of people's stories. It's not, and that was something because at that point I was thinking of going and becoming part of like a sexual abuse or, you know, a sexual assault group. I was like, oh, if I go to this group, then I'll be with these other women and, you know, and my therapist immediately, and this isn't knocking people that are going to these or feel the need to go to that. Like you do what you have to do for yourself. But in that moment in time, it was life-changing for me because this therapist was like, Clarissa, no, you're not doing that. You're not going to that. And I was like, why not? And he's like, because what happened to you was an event. He's like, people go get in accidents. They get in car accidents. That's an event that happened in their life. It doesn't define you. Yeah. You're not going to let this is not going to define you. He's like, this is an event. You're going to get better. And, you know, and that for me was super helpful and super, I still think about that. Even when things happen or, you know, I think that was probably one of the lowest times of my life, but I remember that moment and being able to overcome that. And even now, like I said, with whatever comes, it's like, I've been through that. I'm like, I can get through this. You know, I can get through COVID or what, you know, all these different things that happen, but it's like you find that strength from these different events. And like you said, being in this industry too, and all the different things that you guys had to endure. So that's why, you know, having group band therapy is amazing. That's incredible. You don't see stuff like that. So it's really, really cool.
One thing you touched upon that I just wanted to like mention something about is it's, I think, really common for people to find a therapist that they don't quite connect with. And it's like not the right fit. And sometimes, unfortunately, I think that stops a lot of people. It's like, oh, well, I went to therapy and it didn't work. So but it's sometimes you have to you have to like, almost like you're dating, you know, it's like, oh, I tried that therapist out, bad fit, try another one. Maybe that was a bad fit, try another one. And then at some point you're probably totally find a person that like works with what your needs are, speaks a language, approaches you in a way that like is helpful, you know? And like, I think sticking with it is maybe just something we should talk about more, you know?
Yeah. Oh, you're exactly right. I went through, I think just when I went through that was like my third therapist that I went through. But I think it takes so much for people to be vulnerable and to talk about these things. So it's like when you're sharing those things, like you said, I think that's a very huge, crucial piece to people. They're like, oh God, I know when I was like going to another one, I was like, I have to like share this again.
Yeah.
I have to bring this person up to speed on like everything that I shared with this other person, and you have to relive it. But like you said, once you're there and you find the right one, it's worth it for sure. But yeah. Well, thank you for letting me. Of course. I didn't share that. I've had a lot of people here, but thank you for holding space for me.
Thank you for trusting me with that.
Yeah. So I know that was. So if anyone does want to talk about that, I mean, I'm happy. I wouldn't say I'm happy to talk about it, but I will talk about it. But it's definitely like, it's probably the one thing that I have never talked about kind of publicly. So, but it is what it is. And it's one of those things where, you know, hopefully sharing this will help someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm here. Done a lot. Yeah, there's a lot that's happening. So can I take a time out really quick?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank y'all for letting me have that moment. It wasn't something I was expecting. Thank you, Curtis, for letting me share that. Wasn't exactly something I was expecting to share on this episode, but I felt like it was eventually going to come out. I didn't know when. So lucky number, episode 25.
Oh,
wow. But I do want to bring it back to, you know, and I acknowledge how I'm feeling, and, you know, it is a heavy topic, something that came up for me, and I wanted to talk about it. And I hope that, you know, that helps some people, and that you're not alone, that it's happened to me too, as well. And it's not okay. You know, Curtis we were just talking about it for a second, and it's not okay. And so if you are going through something, like, this isn't something to just kind of wash over and feel like you can't talk about it, but it's definitely something that is a part of you, but it doesn't define you. So I want to bring it back to our mutual happy place, which is music. Y'all know I love music, and I want to talk to you about exciting projects and things that you have coming up. So can you share that, please, and make me laugh and smile and have all the feel goods and things to look forward to, because I love Bright Light Social Hour and I love you. So tell me all the good things.
I'm going to try to make 4 records this year.
4?
There's 4 records going.
Just for me or for
for you and everyone else?
That's amazing.
Bright Light's working on something like a double record.
Wow.
I'm working on a short.
That's ambitious.
Yeah. It's that Weed Martyr versus Let's Go Grief thing, where it's weed. My kind of idea for it, and this is Jackie's too, is like, you know, it's like, we are Weed Martyr, this aggrieved stoner metal band going from town to town, tired from tour, traumatized by things in our lives that we were hurt by, and we get to this magic club in Montreal, this like underground kind of a disco vibe, and it's like the energy, the sirens of Let's Go Grief like bring Weed Martyr to some kind of peace, you know? So it's like the record will be some like these kind of heavy dark songs, and some kind of like liberatory dance music or something, and it'll kind of work into an ending we haven't written yet, but it's like we're going somewhere with it. I'm trying to write a follow-up to like my record from a few years ago. And in the process of writing a follow-up record, I've started working with a songwriter from Cincinnati. Her name's Mia Carruthers. She's been in a number of bands by her name and other bands. And we started writing music together a few months ago, and just gradually kind of written music and fallen in love. And like, we're thinking about starting a band, and we are starting a band. So I think we're going to make a record too. So it's like, there's just a bunch of things happening at once it's like, I think there is like an upslope out of this kind of COVID year, you know. For me, it was hard to take a year off of music. I lost a relationship last year. like the band kind of hit a wall at some point, and we lost our drummer. Not, we parted ways with our drummer. He's still with us somewhere. I can't find him.
Is he living his best life without y'all?
I hope so.
Yeah.
But finally getting out of COVID and starting to, and having just some optimism out there and in our culture and our government and our daily lives has really been helpful for me. So I have been progressively more upbeat. If we want to get back there, I am getting back there slowly but surely. We all take our traumas with us as we go. They never go away, but we just like do something with them that can be productive. And for us, it seems like it's music, that's like our, maybe the most powerful therapy we have. Seriously.
I heard something really interesting today that was talking about like that and how you can either react or respond. And you're obviously trying to go to responding to those types of things versus reacting to those things. So with responding, like you said, I think the music outlet for you and having that has been, and then how it's interesting how it's like a domino effect. It's like when one thing starts hitting and you're feeling good, then it's like, okay, now all these other areas start to open up and feel good. The universe is like, okay, Curtis is ready. Clarissa's ready. You guys are doing good. We'll just keep putting little like, breadcrumbs, giving you the good stuff. So that's
it was
amazing.
Like running into you the other day. It was like maybe the first time I actually got into town and like went to a bar.
I have not been to that. I've never even been there. I hadn't been to Lester Pearl on the east side like ever. And my friend casually lived like right down the street from there. And I met a mutual friend there, one of the my friend Zuzu. And but it was like the first time I'd ever been there. And then I was like,
over and I was like, oh,
I was like, wait a minute, we're both wearing our masks.
All the concerts and stuff on Instagram that I know.
But I've always wanted to have you on the show, and I think, like I said, I'm just grateful for you to be here, and all the different people that we've had have just been amazing and amazing artists that have become friends. And I mean, I'm obviously big fans of music and being able to bring people a different side of you besides just the music. So, like I said, I enjoyed the conversation. So, how can people? Do you have any upcoming shows that are coming up? And
we do. Let's see. It was funny. Last Friday, it was like everything kind of like went to life. Like our booking agent was like, hey, I got 2 offers, and it's like, I think we'll be doing something in May and something in June. They'll all be in the area. I don't know right now which ones they are.
I think the last time I saw you guys was like, I think it was like a random pop-up at Aviator Nation, or maybe it was a So Far.
Yeah.
Y'all
one
were
of the
playing
So
there,
Far things. Yeah.
which is really cool.
Right on. That's good. I remember that one. I think we're going to do like something again with them later in the summer, but like a kind of, we want to experiment with doing like stripped down versions of our music. Cause like it was kind of weird playing to seated people.
And now that's like the norm.
Right. Yeah. Like Jackie is constantly like, everybody, let's party. And people are like, oh no, that's not the thing we're supposed to do here.
Oh yeah. The So Far people
seated.
are like very seated and very
yeah.
It's a different vibe for sure.
But we're on all of the normal online places. We are, even though our name is too long, the Bright Light Social Hour, the acronym TBLSH is how you find us usually on Instagram or Twitter. Or whatnot.
Are you active on all the socials as well?
I'm being just a kind of like right square in the millennial frame. I mostly am on Instagram. It's like I feel like our folks are on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, and then like the people younger than us are on like TikTok or Snapchat or something. And that's fine, but I'm in the Instagram crew.
Same obviously. I'm an Instagram crew too. Wait, can we talk really quick about your project that you have with Walker Lukens, who's another great amazing artist in Austin, super talented guy. So what is it? Tell people about the project that you guys have going on.
Walker went to the same college that Jack and I went to. He's like a couple years younger. But like we've had him out on tour, like opening up for Bright Light, like multiple tours over time. Like we're really close buds. Walker and Jack like live close to one another and really spend a lot of time together. So we've been like involved in producing music, performing music, just being friends for years. He was approached by someone who's been writing this book about the Alamo, and it's called Forget the Alamo. And it's basically about the sort of untold, more or less white supremacist story of early Texas and the Alamo itself. And we've been, Walker has been kind of given the task of curating a soundtrack for it. So, which is kind of a cool thing to soundtrack a book. So it's like something like a book club, like we're all reading it, we're all talking about it, we're all like, oh, look, what do we write songs about it and stuff. And they're just trying to kind of come up with like some music that tells a few of the stories and like an interesting other way than the book itself does, you know. It's the book itself is probably pretty easy to imagine that at some point Spanish Texas became Mexico when Mexico won its independence from Spain. Mm-hmm. Mexico didn't want slavery in any of their territories, and the white settlers of Texas did not like that. So they wanted to fight Mexico to keep slavery in Texas. And many of them died very foolishly at the Alamo. And subsequently with clandestine American backing, which is like a CIA story of the 20th century or something. Oh my goodness. Itself.
That's a whole other podcast in itself.
Indeed. Eventually they won independence and became a state. And then that was even a pretext for the Mexican-American War, where we just decided to steal another third of Mexico just because of America's military power at the time. And so the story tells a lot of important ways to look at history, because it's in Texas, the Alamo is required by the Texas Constitution to be taught from a heroic perspective, right? It's like it's enshrined in our laws or something, like that the heroes of the Alamo were like doing the right, you know?
Wow.
And it's like important to know the context, you know? They're actually just like a lot of people, like mostly white slavers. And, for all the folks at home, slavery is bad.
Yeah.
And it should be fought and defeated.
I think we should definitely end on that. Slavery is bad. You should not. That's crazy. That's really cool, though. I love the idea of having a soundtrack to a book, something that is a different type of, like you said, a visual medium, or even people that listen to audiobooks. That's really cool. Yeah. So when's that coming out that
not
people
sure.
can expect?
You're still working on it.
Still working on it? So
the book's not in print yet. It's cool. I've been reading like an advanced copy on my Kindle, and it's like all like messed up looking because it's still being edited and stuff.
Yeah.
it's like been a hard read. But yeah, it's coming, and some music will be coming with it.
Well, that's exciting.
And more with Walker all the time. I love that guy.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to have Walker on. I have not had him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yet. So
brilliant mind and fun.
Well, you have to link that up because I would love to have him on. I'm fascinated by him as well. But we'll definitely have all the links for everyone to follow you, follow the Bright Light Social Hour, and make sure you guys have to see. It's such a great live show. Steve, we're definitely have to go see that show. It's amazing. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for holding space for that moment.
Anytime.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one to to release. But thank you so much, and cannot wait for all the success and everything that is coming up for you.
Can't wait for you to come to the show.
Can't wait. Thank you so much, and we'll see y'all guys next week. Bye.